Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and that cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.
Hey guys, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Hey, how's it? Peter from the West Coast Wolves, and this is my companion,
Galen from the West Coast Wolves.
It's great to have you guys now, but I have a very important question for you before we kick it off. First off, are you surfers that play music or are you musicians that surf?
Well, I was definitely a surfer that's played music. I actually surfed kind of professionally for 2 years during and after school. And then I started playing music and I was very bad at it. But, you know, fortune favors the brave and the ignorant. And I thought if I could be so good at surfing, I could be as good at playing guitar and playing in a band. So I kind of just left the surfing by the wayside because I wasn't going to be like in the top guys there. And I loved music so much that I just started a band and I thought, you know, if I try hard enough, I'll get good enough. Anyway, It turns out I was much better at surfing than I playing in a band. So now I'm more playing in a band than I am at surfing, but I haven't quit my day job, which is in neither of those two professions.
Right. And Pete, what about you? Are you much of a surfer?
I used to bodyboard, and then I started surfing when I went on my first date with my wife-to-be. I didn't want to rock up with a bodyboard, so I took a surfboard. She had a surfboard. But I've been playing guitar already before that. So I think one thing both Galen and I have in common is that we love music. And surfing is an amazing sport, but it doesn't quite it's not quite the same as writing an amazing banjo lick or something like that, for me.
True. Now you guys released Burn It on the 7th of July, a collection of songs off your upcoming album. What can you tell us about it?
Burn It. It's quite different from our other songs. It doesn't actually have banjo in it, does it?
It does have a lot of banjo.
What does it?
Yeah. In the verses and the chorus. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Clearly, I don't listen that well. But it's got this. Yeah. So I mean, we always start with like some kind of songwriting process, and I think that one we came up with this kind of weird, I think I made up some weird guitar from like my fuzz pedal, and then our bassist Migs made up like a slap bass to it, which we thought was just like so out of the ordinary. And then Pete found this acoustic guitar rhythm that was almost like it was quite actually an African sound. Like I mean, we can hear that it's got an African influence to it, which we don't try and make these things. We kind of have a anything goes attitude in the band practice room, and we come from such diverse backgrounds that we just let anything go. And and then like the chorus kind of just wrote itself, and we had this kind of weird Michael Jackson part with this African verse, and then like a punk chorus, and that's like that kind of sums up West Coast Wolves to a T. It's like we jumble a whole bunch of sounds together, a little bit of ska, a bit of reggae, lots of banjo, some heavy guitars every now and then. We've got, we think, quite a killer rhythm section. Don't tell them.
You guys to get even bigger,
yeah. And the song's actually about like fighting with a person in a relationship. Like one minute you absolutely love them, and the next minute you hate them. You know, you just want to like burn it down, like stuff this, I hate it all. Like, and then 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, okay, no, everything's fine. And it was like, I don't think I've ever written a song about love, so it's not really about love, but it's more about that interaction where you just like, everything's fine, and then everything sucks. And then everything's fine, and then everything sucks.
Right.
Yeah, and then we had a in our previous like kind of lineup we had a female vocalist with us, and we had the drummer, and they started dating, and they kind of did this to the band. It was like in and then out, and then in and then out. So,
But don't tell them. Hopefully, they don't watch this. But
yeah, no, they won't take offense.
Right. Doesn't sound complicated at all. And what can you tell us about the upcoming album then? Where's the inspiration come from? What can we expect?
I go.
Yeah, you're on a roll. That last answer was so good. Yeah.
Well, I think the West Coast Wolves have actually been around for a long time, and the band members have all been playing music, not all together, but in other bands for a long time. And I think in the last 5 years, including COVID, which wasn't very productive from a songwriting perspective, but it was very good for us because Pete and I recorded quite a lot of stuff during that time on the vocals. Sorry, I'm a bit sick. And it was the last 5 years, the band went, as I alluded to in the previous answer, had a lot of member changes for a while, not because they didn't like us or didn't like the music. It's just sometimes one guy moved to China. Yeah, he's actually playing in a very good band there. He played in Inner Mongolia the other day.
Right.
Yeah, well.
Okay.
So and yeah, we just had changes. One of the founders of the band he couldn't play loud music anymore. Tinnitus, yeah. So like just strange things like that, and then eventually we got a team together, which were like super core, and like we were all very committed to the cause, and we spent 3 years putting together all our influences. I like really heavy music, and I also like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and really mellow music, Tom Petty and stuff like that, like folk music, good songwriting. I believe any good song can be played almost in any format. If it's a good song, it'll live through any format. So that's where we start. Pete and I really try and write nice songs, mostly on the acoustic, a couple of nice riffs. And then we happen to get a really good rhythm section going with Miggs and Lawrence and Jem on the percussion. And then they bring the groove in, and that really worked. And we probably had about 15 songs, and we whittled it down to 11. And then COVID hit, and we had luckily recorded all the instruments, most of the instruments. And then Pete and I were lucky enough to spend like a year and a half messing around on vocals when we were allowed to go to the studio. And yeah, that's how it came together. So it's a lot of influences, quite a bit of time, and 5 people that really get along, which is cool.
Right. And when it comes to recording them, what was it like trying to find the right producer, get the right setup?
The struggle continues.
The struggle continues. That's exactly what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been, and we worked with people that we know, which is a good place to start. But there's a lot of room for improvement always, and we've just started working on our next record, and we've got a lot of ideas about things that we'd like to do the same, but things that we'd like to do differently, and try out different sounds and vintage gear and that kind of stuff. So that's I mean, we've learned a lot about recording. We've recorded in a few places now, and it's something that you keep learning. You don't think no one ever knows it all unless you're working with Rick Rubin. He might know it all. But Don't Forget to Howl is the other thing that happened about that time was that I started playing banjo, and that also changed our sound quite a bit. So this is the first record that we recorded on with the banjo, and it meant that I stepped away from the guitar quite a bit, which I think opened up the sound a little bit because the banjo is at a different frequency altogether. And the name Don't Forget to Howl, it kind of came about. It's a line in one of the songs on the album, but it kind of, for me, it means different things to different people. But for me, COVID was such a difficult time, and we kind of had to come up with a name in that time, and it was definitely had an influence on its interpretation for me, and also because we're now we're in our 40s. Don't forget to howl. So
early 40s.
You have that feeling of youth. and yeah.
Right. And I'm always intrigued by how people find their style, find their voice. You know, what makes a guy decide he's going to join a metal band and become a sort of screamer. So, where did you guys find your style? How did it evolve into what it is today?
It's yeah, it really is completely different influences. Like as I said, I like heavier stuff as well as like songwriting stuff. Pete likes, and Pete and Miggs and Lawrence like a lot more, especially Miggs and the bass player and Pete, they like quite a lot of reggae and ska. Lawrence, the drummer, actually plays in like a speed metal band and a ska band and our band. So he really, and yeah, I mean, the ska band that they play for actually plays kind of like quite a bit of like pop influence stuff now. So he really is across the board. And yeah, and it's literally like put those things in the pot and stir it for a while, and put a lot of hours into it and a couple of beers and see what comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I played, and Galen also played in a punk rock band for many years, like 15 years before starting the Wolves. And I wanted to do something a bit more folk, a bit more acoustic, but still have some of the heavier elements. So it was a natural progression. But I was very close-minded. I used to only listen to punk rock and ska, and since then I've broadened my horizons significantly. Yeah.
We're not going to tell you what he listens to these days.
Right. And
we've been influenced by our daughters, who are like quite young.
Oh God, don't say Taylor Swift or something.
No, actually, you haven't, not Taylor Swift yet. But it's quite interesting because like my daughters will listen to like they listen to a lot of Katy Perry, and I can appreciate that. Like I think the songwriting's brilliant. Like. And like the little intricacies that they put in the recording, you listen to that stuff with your headphones. There's like so many different things going on. It's like so well produced. Like I wouldn't buy the CD. Well, I wouldn't tell anybody I'm going to buy a CD. But
yeah.
But those big pop albums, I mean, those aren't. They're very well produced. Like there's things you can learn from them. Like the quite interesting. It's a bit off the topic, but the guy that produced our vocals, Graham, like I used to fight with him a lot, but he was the drummer for Tom Jones.
Right.
Yeah, he was like the kid prodigy. He was like 17 years old and he used to drum for Tom Jones. So he has like a little bit of an ear for putting a bit of a pop element into it. And he'd come up with like just these crazy things. Okay, and I sing this and then sing this and then sing this. And then I'd fight with him like 50% of the time. And then at the end, I'd drive home with Pete and go like, I actually think he was right about it. Yeah. So Graham, if you listen to this, kudos, man.
And we'll dive into your early influences. So now this is a bit of a tricky one. If you can you remember your very earliest musical memory?
Yeah, I can't remember if it's my very, very first one, but I can remember my most important musical memory from when I was a kid. My dad took me surfing, and I lived in this place called George, and it was about 2.5 hours away from Jeffreys Bay, which is a famous surf place. And we drove, and he woke me up at like 4 a.m, and we drove like 2.5, 3 hours to Jeffreys Bay. And as the sun was coming up, he put on a song from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young called Helplessly Hoping. And it's just like, and I remember like the sun coming up, like I've got like a frog in my throat thinking about it, like sun coming up, like just waves coming, like going down the point, and I'm just going like, and it was just like this overwhelming thing that will just sit with me for my entire life. Like every single time I hear that song, I'm like,
takes you back.
This is what it's about, you know, combining an emotion with a song, with an experience. It's just, I mean, there's probably a handful of those, more, hopefully more, but maybe there's like 2 handfuls of times in your life that you can remember things like that, and it's just, they make it and you never forget them.
Yeah, it's almost like a scene of a movie.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Pete, you have some tough competition now.
I don't think mine is as dramatic as that, but I mean, I remember clearly listening to my mom's Beatles records, but I was never particularly blown away by anything until I heard punk rock for the first time, and that was like the first time I found like a genre that I could connect with. And for me, it was also, strangely enough, going surfing and listening to cassette tapes in the car on the tape deck, listening to like the early days of the Offspring and Green Day and those kind of bands. That for me was the point of real connection with the music. Yeah.
And growing up then, what was your local music scene like? Was there lots of gigs to go to? And how does it compare to today?
Jeez, that's a tough question to answer. There were until I had about 18, there weren't any gigs to go to. There were no all ages gigs, so I didn't watch a live band until I was like almost 18, I think. And strangely enough, in South Africa, there was a little punk rock scene that started in probably the late 90s, early 2000s. And had quite a decent following. And when I say decent, I mean like maybe 2,000 people in the whole city in Cape Town.
On a good day.
But it was healthy, it was creative and inspiring, and there was like-minded people. It was quite something. Today it's a lot more diverse, but still the market for this kind of like Western guitar orientated rock and roll kind of stuff is very small in South Africa. And yeah, so it's not like, it's very difficult for a band to become like quite well known here.
Yeah. Nothing more to add. I started my first band. I was 18 or 19, so that was like in 1999. And we played a couple of gigs at like surf contests and stuff because I used to surf back then, and all the guys in my band used to surf. And then I don't know, we played like 10 shows or something like that. And then somebody, actually Marcus, the bassist in Pete's other band, said, "You guys sound like a punk band. You should come play at a punk rock show." We rocked up this place called the Purple Turtle, and we heard, which is like the center of the city, which was like such a big venue, like compared to like what we'd been playing at. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was absolutely blown away. Like somebody was doing the sound. I wasn't doing the sound myself, and I didn't know anything about sound. And prior to that, I was just like, the first gig, I had like a broomstick with a bucket with some duct tape for the mic stand. Yeah. And I just thought like, all these guys have got a desk. So I went to like the local sound place and I hired a desk and had about 48 channels on it. And there was only like 4 mics that needed to go in. I was working out how to push this thing, like pushing a whole bunch of buttons. Yeah. And anyway, we made something out of it. Yeah.
And I thought of something there I'd love to ask you guys. Maybe you can't answer, but something I've noticed from talking to so many South African bands is they all say the scene is relatively small. Why do you think it's not more popular, or rock isn't more popular in South Africa?
Well, there's not many rock listeners in South Africa, eh? Just one of those things. It's the country's it's more hip hop and what they call kwaito and R&B. It's just one of those things. Yeah.
Right. And
also, sorry, like all the rock in South Africa needs to compete with all the rock around the world. People don't go like, they're South African because they're special, and we're going to listen to them instead. Like we're compared to like anybody else in America or the UK or wherever, or that can make the same kind of music as us, and so we have to compete against them. If you can sit there and get drunk on a Friday night and listen to your favorite tune from America, you're not going to go watch West Coast Bulls down the road if you don't really like their music, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's competition. The competition is global these days, It's good and it's bad. Like, we might touch on it later, but we've got more listeners in South America than we do in South Africa.
Jeez.
On Spotify anyway.
Spotify, yeah.
But I think it's not institutionalized like it is in the States and in Europe. Like there aren't like venues all over the place that are playing rock music. There's no shows for all age shows for kids. They don't get into it at a young age. And it's much more of a dance kind of kwaito listenership as a result, I think. Yeah.
Interesting. And as a concert goer then, what concerts would you say have made you guys?
Geez, I mean, there have been, despite the small scene, there are some amazing bands. One of my biggest influences from when I was younger was a band called Hog Hoggity Hog. I used to go to their concerts all the time. Yeah, and they were a huge part of the punk rock scene in the 90s and 2000s. And then there are also other great bands. Maybe you can come in while I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, for me, like, in early days, like I'm talking like 2005 and before that, when there weren't really big bands that toured here, like Bryan Adams toured here. I think I saw him. I think I saw Celine Dion. Like you went to like every single live concert you could get your hands on. But that said, like the Hogs, Hog Hoggity Hog, which Pete mentioned, like they really solidified the scene from 1997 to like 2007, 2012. And they were just the stalwart of Cape Town where we live, punk ska scene. I mean, they were absolutely brilliant. I remember like standing in the back of the crowd. I think I was like, I don't know, in 2012, I was 32, thinking, I'm too old to like get involved in this pit. And like 1.5 songs in, I was like stage diving and going like as crazy as I could. And yeah, it was epic. Like, and at that stage, we also had a lot of nice venues. COVID really dinged the venues quite a bit. Yeah, so I think from a local standpoint, for me, the Hogs was just, they were just always there. They were brilliant. Fuzzy Gish in Johannesburg were also like the Hogs of Cape Town, like always there, brilliant shows. And then, yeah, I mean, I've got 2 international acts which absolutely blew me away, but maybe you want to.
Yeah, I mean, the international ones, yeah, I mean, geez, I went all the way to London to watch some bands a few years ago before COVID, and that was amazing. But nothing, I mean, some amazing bands out there, but nothing really noteworthy to mention now.
You're not going to believe this. My top concert I've ever been to was Rammstein.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know I absolutely love Rammstein.
Oh man.
And yeah, so I missed for some reason I missed them in Cape Town, and I flew up to Johannesburg to go see them, and I stayed in an Airbnb with my friend, just one friend of mine, and went to this concert, and I was just absolutely blown away. They had this cauldron on stage with I mean, I'm not into like theatrics, but I also, because I like the music as well, and like the flame was coming out of the guy's head and like put the cauldron alight. Then he put the keyboardist in the cauldron. I mean, like it was just insane. Like, and I didn't even have front row tickets, and it felt like my eyebrows were gonna like go on fire. Like, yo, that was amazing.
That would be very hard to top now. Sounds like, oh, geez. And we'll dive into your own gigs then. For any listeners that haven't caught one of your shows, what can they expect? Give them the full experience if you can.
They can expect, one of the nice things about our set is that it starts off really, really, really soft and slow. And by the end of it, it's like a roaring party. It's like, yeah, it's the building up of the set, the way we've structured it is quite something. So most of the time people are like sitting down at the beginning of the show, and then by the end of the show there's like a bit of a riot going on, which is pretty cool. We've got as Galen mentioned earlier, we've got our rhythm section is just incredible. Like they are like on the metronome, and the sound is huge. And then throw in like some left field percussion and some banjo stuff and a whole bunch of different genres, and you start to get an idea.
Right. And you guys have a lot of buzz around you. How do you go about creating such a buzz? What do you credit your success with?
I mean, I think we've got the right formula at the moment in terms of the members in the band, and it's nice and stable. A band can often take years to get the right people, and we've got the right people. And the other thing we've done, I think, quite well is market ourselves over the last 3 years or so. And I think we found kind of an identity for the band that we've been able to market, which is like the real representation of who we are and the kind of music we're making. So I think if you manage to kind of find that brand identity, which is an authentic identity, and then market it well, I think that's been part of it, a big part of it,
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I think that's important. Like, we worked very hard at trying to capture like quite interesting moments, which the band does actually do. Like, we're quite all big going up the coast, and writing songs around. I mean, it sounds like we're staging it, but it's not actually the case. Like trying to capture moments when we're sitting around a fire, trying to make up a new song or test a riff or just having a good time. And I think it's very difficult, but if you can capture those moments, and I think it's if you can portray it well on social media or whatever, I think it is, and it's quite real when you put it out there. I think it is very important, and
people relate to that.
We try very hard to make sure that everything we do is very real, and there's nothing staged about the Wolves, I can tell you that.
Good to hear. Good to hear. And out of all the gigs you've played, is there one that sticks in your mind as maybe the best, or the best experience you've had?
Hard one to answer that one. We've been playing a lot of gigs.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Excuse me.
Tough one. Yeah, we've played out of the most recent bunch of gigs, I think that the one that Scarborough was a really cool one. The one
that was cool. Yeah, that was cool.
The one at a place called Camel Rock, full house, and we love actually playing shows with like family events where people can bring their kids, and it's like an open kind of thing like that. And this was one of those. And it's in a big restaurant, which is after the show, the place got shut down because of the noise levels. So unfortunately, bands can't play there anymore. But that was an amazing one, and we also got we film all our gigs as well, so we've got all these memories, which is quite amazing. That was, and then the Boss Boogie last year was quite cool. This festival we played in Pretoria. We're playing there again in September actually, which is quite nice. And that's like just a whole bunch of Afrikaans like festival goers. Yeah, that was quite fun. It's always nice to play to an audience that don't know you, in fact, because you can really see how people react. That's a real reaction. Yeah.
We also, quite a special festival was we created the festival up the West Coast, and this guy's got this big quarry where they mine out of. So there's got this big wall where they had mined out in the front, and we invited a whole bunch of people, and people, some people paid. And we staged like a 2-day festival for the release of one of our songs or something like that.
Factory of Bones, yeah.
Factory of Bones, the first song. And it was really cool. We were meant to do it again, but something happened. We'll do it again at some point, because the property owners are very stoked and want us to do it again. It's a bit, organizing a festival is
hard work.
It's quite difficult. But so that was, from an aesthetic point of view, it was really, really nice. We should do it again. I think the ones in the caravan park, 10 days and 10 nights. Those
okay, yeah. We've done a few shows up the West Coast, and we did one with the show at this place called Eland's Bay, which is where I started playing the banjo for the first time in one of our songs. You can actually, there's a whole documentary if anyone's interested called Deep Blue Middle Sea that was made about the experience. Our friend is a very talented filmmaker, Brian Little, and his company Fly on the Walls captured the whole thing.
It's an amazing documentary. It's won awards and stuff. Deep Blue Middle Sea
on Vimeo. Yeah. But it was like a free show. Like the whole community came out.
It was big. It was probably like 500 people. Well, for us,
which is also very interracial and mixed, which is important in South Africa. It's just, we were right on the beach. It's the venue stage was built in the sand, pretty much. So it was pretty cool. Yeah.
So you want to hear the story? Because it was, this is pretty much what made us, if you think about it. Because we started playing the banjo there.
Yeah, it was a big turning point. Yeah.
So what happened is that we had started recording Brian Little is a very good friend of ours, and so we kind of thought, okay, well, let's shoot a music video at Elands Bay, okay, which is a surfing place up the West Coast. And then Brian was like, yes, but we've always wanted to do, as a group of friends, do 10 days and 10 nights in the Dust Bowl, which is a campsite at Elands Bay. And I've got load shedding now.
Yeah, literally the electricity just went off. Yeah, that's what happened.
I've seen that.
So we decided to shoot it. He decided to shoot a documentary over 10 days and 10 nights, and we would shoot a music video. And then halfway through that, we realized that we didn't actually have the song for the music video.
Right.
So we wrote the song and recorded like the portions of the song in the campsite. And he learned how to play the banjo like right there and then. And then we went back and like reconstructed the song, and then he came back and recreated the music video, and then with that the documentary. And at the end of 10 days and 10 nights, we held this festival for like a free festival for the entire city kind of thing, which is a town. It's like 500 people, and that's it. So that was, I think, that was like almost the best genesis of the Bulls. Kind of.
Yeah, it was that kind of got the momentum going, and then that's when the other members joined the band. It all happened pretty much snowballed after that. Yeah,
you drew it out of us, Brian. Drew it out of us. Good interviewer.
That sounds pretty epic. I know what I'll be watching tonight anyway.
Yeah, Deep Blue Middle Sea.
Deep Blue Middle Sea with the C with just a capital letter C. Deep Blue Middle Sea with the letter.
Yeah.
Cool. And to flip it around now, not to get too negative and without mentioning names, is there a gig you would say was the worst experience you've had, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, we've got a lot of worst gig experience.
Well, I had a gig the other night, and I was very grumpy because when I have to do the sound, I get very irritated, and everybody expects that I can do the sound because I once upon a time, 20 years ago, to go to the sound engineering diploma. I get so irritated when they think I can do the sound. I normally just get too drunk, can't play. Anyway, worst case, I mean, it actually didn't end up that bad. I actually had a good time, but like the worst gig, I can't remember a terrible gig for a long time, like a terrible one. I can remember some with my old band.
Right.
Once the drummer got too drunk and he played the drums. He turned around and played the drumsticks on the bouncer's head, and then took a piss halfway through the show. I was so annoyed. It was like the second day.
That was a bad show.
It was the second day of a 10-day tour. That was a disaster. And I lost my voice in the second show. I had no voice for the rest of the trip.
Oh, lovely. That might just take the biscuit as the worst. So
no, I've got a worse one. It wasn't in the Wolves, in my punk rock band, Half Price, but we played in Soweto once. There was no sound guy there either, by the way. And like the electricity, Soweto's in a township outside of Johannesburg, and like the electricity cable was coming from like someone's, like it came over the wall. No one saw where it was plugged in, Anyway, I got electrocuted by the microphone, and I wasn't wearing any shoes, and I was holding the microphone and my guitar, and like the microphone like got stuck. I clenched it in my fingers. Yeah, no, I almost died. Like that was a bad gig. I didn't even play the gig after that. Anyway, not a bad gig experience.
Yeah, that's worse.
That takes the cake.
Yeah, definitely. Jesus. Were you like seriously injured? Did you have to go to hospital after it, or?
No, I funny enough, my wedding ring, like it broke. Like after, I wasn't sure if it was the current going through me, but it was pretty hardcore. Like I just could only sit there and someone gave me a beer and I drank that and I felt better afterwards. But a pint will do that to you. But no, I didn't have to go to hospital. But it was a close call. Yeah, I could have probably been like fried to death. Yeah.
Jesus. Oh man. Oh, and when it comes to your career, then how do you measure success?
We've got a target.
Yeah, actually, I was going to the same thing.
We've got a target.
I don't have any tattoos, and I think the rest of the band have some tattoos. Actually, Jim doesn't have any. So a while back, I said if we get to 1 million streams, I'll get a tattoo.
Right.
So now we're on about 140,000 right now. So only another 860 to go. Yeah.
Right.
And that's just on, that's just on Spotify. If you add up the other platforms, not even closer to the 1 million mark. Yeah.
Have you picked a tattoo?
I haven't, no. And luckily they haven't, I don't know what I'm gonna I don't want
But we would love to go and tour Europe or the US. Like that would be a pretty good thing to happen. Yeah. So we're hopeful of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think our music does really well live. And I think if we had to play some nice festivals, like some big festivals, ones that make me shake, then that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys would be perfect for all them like European summer festivals, just that summer vibe.
Tell them, Brian. Tell them.
I will. And what are some things apart from tattoos and a million streams? What are some things left on your bucket list that you'd like to achieve with the band?
I would like to write another good album. I classify the last one as like probably my best work. My previous band we had about 6 albums, and but I normally just made them and then just gave a few to my friends and family, and then that was about it. I was very bad at marketing. When I was in charge of marketing for the world, we only had 300 Instagram followers, and then Pete took over. But yeah, writing an album is very, very hard. But I would like to have more than one good album,
Well, I think we've learned a lot about this last album in particular. It took us a bloody long time to write the whole thing. And so we're pretty excited about some of the new stuff we've started writing. And there's something magical about creating new music. And we think like the next one is going to be even better than Don't Forget to Howl. Yeah.
Brilliant. And before we get into the last couple of questions, then something I'm always intrigued by is the post-gig, post-tour blues. Say you play a massive show on a Friday night, you wake up Saturday morning, it's back to reality. How do you deal with it?
I have 3 daughters, so I try and stay as far away from them as possible because I'm not quite a big hangover. Yeah, it is quite tough. It's an interesting question that, because like I do actually suffer a little bit from that, because like it's so different. I have a very desk job, very number crunching job, Excel spreadsheets and whatnot.
Lovely.
And it's quite stressful. And then you have a gig on a Saturday or Sunday where you just like trying to knock the cover off the ball kind of thing. You're trying to have the best time of your life kind of thing. And then yeah, it is very difficult. I won't lie. It's I suppose that's just try and write another good song, I suppose. For
me, it's kind of like a balance. Is like work is the band can be like one extreme, and like our day jobs are another extreme. And if you just did the day job the whole time, I think I'd go mad. And if I just did the gigs all the time, I think I'd also go mad. But so you've got to have like, for me, it's kind of the balance is actually quite important.
Like a yin yang. It's interesting. And right, your future plans, what's coming next? Lay it all out first.
Well, we're going to be releasing some more stuff, more songs over the next 3-4 months.
Got 4 more, eh?
4 more. And also we've got one music video that's just about to be finished for Reincarnation, which was the previous single. Unfortunately, it's bloody hard to align the release of the singles and the music videos. Don't ask me why, because the singles are already recorded. So it's just the music videos. We
are taking a very unorthodox approach to our release strategy, as you might have noticed. We released like a single, and then we released the music video, and then another single, and then another music video. We can go into those while we're doing that. There is some method behind the madness.
But if you go onto YouTube, you can see there's a video for each of the songs. We try and release one video for each song. And it's music videos are quite hard to do if you're operating on a shoestring budget. So that's part of the timing challenge around it, to coordinate that. But
yeah.
So those are the next few releases are pretty much planned. We've got some big festivals coming up later in the year that we've been booked for. and we're very optimistic around for next year. Yeah, we're gonna have a new album. We're gonna be in the studio next year this time, or not this time, but earlier than this time, beginning of the year recording. And then who knows? Hopefully hopefully you manage to recommend the West Coast Wolves to all your contacts, and next thing you know, we're in Europe for the summer.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Now you're going to have to dive into the method behind your madness with that after releasing or after mentioning it.
Yeah, so like normally you have an album, and we're old now. And normally you'd have an album, and then you'd make the CDs, and then you'd try and have a gig, and you'd sell a couple of CDs and try and get distribution, which is almost impossible. And then we hadn't done that in quite a long time, and we had to reevaluate like how the world works these days with Spotify and Instagram and Facebook and all these different platforms that you have to be on. And then Pete came up with this idea. He does a lot of research in his spare time, and don't know how he does it actually. And and he came up with like, we were always going to do it like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 singles. And then he said, no, well, let's just release like almost all the songs as singles, because if you drop one album as an extreme scenario, like you get a couple of Instagrams and you get a couple of Spotifys, and then like the
curves off.
Yeah, it curves off, Whereas unfortunately, if you drop a song, as long as it's a decent song, it almost has the same impact as dropping an album. So this is what we've now realized that all the big artists are doing. They release them song by song by song, and then they release the album, because you can generate the content around everything, and then it helps with almost like muscle memory for your fans. So in one way, it's quite irritating for some people, because they're used to having the whole album and sitting in the car and listening to the whole album. But in other ways, it's just helping us engage with our audience better over a longer period of time, quite frankly, so they don't forget about us. And
we've also learned a lot, because most of the stuff we're doing by ourselves. So we've learned a lot about how to get the most traction from releasing a song and a video. If you release a whole album, you're only learning once, and then you have to write a new album.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
18 months later, you can release another album, which is like by that time your fans have mostly forgotten who you are. So and then the other thing for any other bands out there that are listening, but the other thing that's really important is that with each release, you have a chance to get on Spotify's editorial playlist. And as you're growing, we've got a better and better chance to get on better and better playlists with each release. Whereas with one, if you drop the whole album at once, you kind of only have one shot at it. So that's, I think there's a lot of good reasons to stagger the release.
Yeah. It's interesting because all these platforms work in different ways, and we didn't know that. Like Spotify's got at some point they're punting some algorithm, and some other guys' platforms punching some different algorithm. It's a full. I don't know. We've got one friend that's kind of helping us out on this. And
Jenny.
Jenny. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah.
And and she knows like the ins and outs of these things, and I'm sure the massive artists know these things. They must have teams of people working on. Somebody's gonna directly drive Taylor Swift's album like straight into the mouth of the Spotify album, and somebody else is driving it straight into the mouth of the Apple iTunes album algorithm, whatever. And so we're trying to get on top of a bit of that stuff. Anyway, long answer to the story thing. But as Pete says, like each time you release something, then you learn something, and you can take it to the next release. You can see me with Excel spreadsheets,
So we'll dive into the last couple of questions then, guys. There are a couple of fun ones. I'm intrigued to hear what you'll say about them. So if you could see any musician from history in concert for one night only, who would it be?
Interesting question. I don't know.
I've always wanted to see Tool. And I know that's not history because I could actually see them if I flew to America, but I don't have any money right now for that. But I think I'd love to see them. And they might not ever play again. I think they might not even do another tour. So that might be history. So, yeah.
That's a good
And
one.
the other one was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. But my dad and I flew to France a couple of years ago to go watch them, and it was amazing.
Oh man,
It was well worth it, yeah. So that was my
Jeez.
two. Yeah, Tool would be my number one.
I'd like to go back, like, this is a strange answer, but I'd like to go back, like, in time, like, to watch, like, a full classical orchestra, like, Beethoven kind of style, just to check it out.
Really?
Yeah, just because I'd like, that guy is like one of the most famous musicians ever in history. So yeah, that would be. And I'm not into the genre of that much, although my dad loved classical music. One of the few things I have in common with my dad. But yeah, something like that would be amazing. I think. Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. That's really like thinking outside the box.
We're a multi-genre band.
There we go. There we go.
And
we've got a fiddle violinist player with our band at the moment, which is for our writing of our new music.
Carly, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Carly.
Right. The next one. So this is a bit weird. If you had to spend 24 hours locked in a room with any musician from history, who would it be?
Locked in a room with somebody for 24 hours, like, wow, hectic. Does Stanley Druckenmiller play any guitars and play any musical instruments?
For me, it'd be a toss-up between Freddie Mercury, Kurt Cobain, and what's the famous guitarist? Jimi Hendrix. Yeah. That's
Be an interesting night.
Taylor Swift, Katy Perry.
I like where you're going.
I'd love for you guys that as well. Yeah. Britney Spears.
No. Maybe can't even remember her name. Christina Aguilera.
Right.
No. Seriously, I think Tom Petty would be cool. Like the was and Mark Knopfler.
Yeah. Two very good ones. Be a good
But
night.
that was in descending order.
Right. And the final one. So, what song would appear on the soundtrack to your lives?
Wow, that's a tough one. It's quite hard to pick one song. Some people, maybe you can do it, Galen.
Yeah, and like I've always loved the song from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young called, as I mentioned earlier, "Helplessly Hoping," or "Carry On" from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. It's the most wonderful song. "Carry On." It's just like goes through a couple of different genres, and it's a cool song.
Has to be that one. So
harmonies are great and words are great.
I could pick like maybe a song from each genre, but to pick one like across all the genres is very difficult. But one song that I really love, really rock and roll song that I love, is that one AC/DC song, "Shook Me All Night Long." Can't go wrong with that song. Yeah.
Brilliant. Listen, guys, thanks a million. I've really enjoyed chatting with you now.
Yeah, thanks very much, Brian. Thanks for reaching out.
This is called the shaka in South Africa. Also in Durban, it's very popular. It's called the shaka. We're going to give you a shaka. There you go.
Brilliant.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concerts that made us.com.